there was a petition by someone named Marketing O'Clock.
Who's she?
It's pretty amazing because the petition over on change.org was for giving advertisers the ability to opt out of non-significant search terms in Google Ads. So, of course, we were behind this. And honestly, this change, as you've heard over the past 2 weeks, or I guess past 1 week and 2 episodes, it's not a positive change. And so we put together a petition saying that if Google is really trying to maintain standards of privacy and strengthen protections around user data, then we would not like to be included in that. So the petition that we put together was pretty simple. Obviously, Google's made a decision not to show search terms. Fine. Our petition is if there actually is a user privacy issue and protecting that data, let advertisers opt out of that. If you want to not show search terms, fine. Just let advertisers choose no, right? So we went through and said that the change is not acceptable. We need to know exactly what we're paying for. So we request full visibility for the terms we're advertising on. In the last show, that was the Roundtable Marketing Talk, I think went into this really well, that Shep hosted. Then we went on to say, all right, no data, no impressions or clicks. If we can't see what a search term is, we do not want to appear for that query, receive that traffic, or pay for the click. Pretty reasonable. Not telling them to roll everything back, just to opt out. And we cited a few different reasons for this. So first, we talked about many times here, is the close variant matching has gotten progressively worse. Mark had a couple of good examples in the aforementioned show, but they're matching more generously and putting brands next to terms that they might not want. That comes into the second point, that you could then show up for sensitive or problematic queries and have your brand advertising on those terms. Thirdly, is Google's response was that those terms we are no longer going to see could be violating standards of privacy and user data standards. If that's the case, I don't want to put my clients on there. If you are telling the truth, Google, and I don't think you are, I don't want my advertisers on things that are standards of privacy breaches. That should be number one, but it's the third thing that we said. And then lastly, if we're actually matching between broad match modified, phrase, and exact, that will go a long way to help us allocate our budgets better. But that's sort of more of a greedy thing, but it's still something. There is no exact match anymore. In all seriousness, in the literal sense, there is no exact match anymore. So for those 4 main reasons, we graciously asked for the ability to opt out. Shep, did I butcher that?
No, I think that was good. I love the addition of the word graciously. You know, it's just fair. I don't want to show up next to that stuff if you don't want to show it to me.
Yes. And this is how I know that their excuse is complete BS. To say that we're not going to show you this because of user data standards, we need to opt out of that if that's the case. If you're putting our ads on something that violates user data, we need the ability to opt out of that. Am I crazy on this? Like that's, I was awake in bed again last night thinking about this. This is what I do now.
No, you're not crazy. I mean, we've got at least 500 people who agree with us at this point.
I know.
So
and so
I don't think we're crazy.
We're 30 hours into it. We got 500 people agreeing with this. And it's very simple. Let us opt out. You don't want to show it because of the issues with your user data, this being compromised. I don't want to compromise user data. I want out of it. It's that simple. Let us out of it. And as Shep said, we've got 500 people already going on this. And if you listen to the show and you care about Google Ads like we do, please sign the petition. I know it's probably not going to do anything, but I just don't know what else to do. I don't know what else to do. And then I sit awake at night and I think that we did this. I think that we did this.
What?
We put these articles out talking about the close variants and how they don't match well and how they're garbage and how you have things like produce showing up for production and how they drop the term software completely and change software with system. And we're calling this out. And I think there's somebody over Google Ads being like, oh yeah, this is pretty bad. Let's just hide
Fix it.
Let's just hide it. No,
That's
let's
not the
hide it.
answer.
Hide it. Okay,
That's
boom.
terrible.
It's
I
hidden.
wasn't blaming myself, but now you're making me think I should.
Well, anyway, it is free to support. Just sign the petition if you'd like. There's a whole article, I don't know, a couple thousand words on there as to why this is not fair. And we'll just keep going here. I guess I broke my rule of staying positive here, but just a few other good points from around the past week on this topic. So Azim at Azim Digital on Twitter said a quote from Julie Baccini on our Marketing Clock show. And she said, there's no reason not to share what that threshold is. Is significant more than 2 or more than 20? And then James Hebden at JP Hebden on Twitter said, sure, there's a reason. If Google keeps it vague, then they can't be called out for further limiting it over time, which is exactly what they're going to do. Google Ads is heading towards a black box where everyone's budgets are efficiently exhausted and you can't opt out of anything.
Terrifying.
That's really scary, but also probably true.
That's why this is why I'm so fired up about these things, is because I can see through it. And you see with the Google partners changes, they are back, what now, 7 months ago, 8 months ago, they had the partners changes that were supposed to be rolled out back in March, where if you want to be a Google partner and you want to keep your badge, you have to do all their bidding for them and hit a certain number. They didn't tell the number at first. They came out with the number afterwards and said you have to hit a 70% threshold score. But I don't care about that because you make the score up. If for all of a sudden you say, I want maximized clicks to be 71% of the overall score, then you have to hit that. And James is spot on with this. If you say it's significant, you can say, well, yeah, it's significant now. And then it's like, oh, well, not down the road. No, significant is a percentage. It's anything under 60% of your traffic isn't going to be shown. So, okay, let's keep it positive here. Mark Gustafson at Mark P. Gus on Twitter had a different thought. And he said, I believe that this, talking about Facebook and limiting the number of ads, and the Google query visibility is more about them saving server costs than anything. And they're just making up a BS reason for it. They're still trying to clean up that cost on the balance sheet. IMO. Still messed up. That'd be nice. I'd feel at peace with that. But I don't think it is because of close variants. And if it wasn't for the close variants matching on the farthest things from being close, then I would be with them. But they're hiding close variants. I said it. All right. So as Shep talked about before, we had our voicemail lineup and we had Kirk, PPC Kirk on Twitter and Sam at Digital Sam I Am on Twitter. Leave us a voicemail, but they left us 4 and 3 respectively. So I edited Kirk's, but Sam left 3 of them right before we started recording here. So we're going to go through Kirk's, and Kirk said not to take it out of context. So we're going to play Kirk's and take it completely out of context. So here we go. Wave your hand and I'll pause it and we can talk about it. So here comes Kirk at PPC Kirk on Twitter.
Hey, so PPC Kirk here. So thinking about the Google search terms, the first thing I want to think about is privacy. So Google claims that this is because of privacy. I actually don't think that that's totally unfounded, to be honest.
And I'm going to pause it for a second. Kirk had a post on Medium, and he gave a couple examples of this where he talked about somebody being potentially identified because they had peanut butter in their nose, and that it could be personally identifiable information. And we'll put a link over in the show notes at marketingclock.com if you want to read his full argument. I know he's got a limited time here.
Everything that Google does has them thinking about how they can get sued and them trying not to get sued. They hate to get sued. They really do. They hate to get sued. I truly think that there are ways that search terms can reveal certain aspects of an individual, especially in small doses, in small geographical locations, and you get enough of a political aspect to it, or religious, or all of the different diversity type ways. I think there is a possibility of litigation against Google, and they don't want that. So I don't think it's totally unfounded.
See, that's
So like put rules in place for like do what everyone's doing on the display end and exclude it for certain categories. Limit it for certain categories. I've just never seen anything personally identifiable. Maybe I'm like too good of a person and I'm just not thinking shady thoughts when I'm looking at the search terms report.
Yeah.
But
right.
there's nothing in there.
And you never saw 100%. You'd see like 98, 99. They were already stripping anything that's actually personally identifiable information. Kirk's example with the peanut butter, it's not personally identifiable. And when it comes to a lawsuit, that's where it gets really fuzzy to me, because I don't know how you have grounds for a lawsuit. And I'm just going to keep using Kirk's example because you wrote a post about it, that somehow my search about peanut butter in my nose makes it to an advertiser. And then somehow an advertiser, because I clicked on an ad after searching for peanut butter in my nose on Google, and then an advertiser finds me. And like, it seems like a lot of a stretch there, in my opinion.
The main issues. What are the main issues with the Google search terms changes? The first one I mentioned was the transparency thing. The second one, and I've not heard a lot of people bring this up, but I actually think it's kind of significant. I'm sure Google has their butts covered here legally, but I actually see this as changing a paid agreement, like in the middle of an agreement that only one party has agreed to change. So someone on LinkedIn noted it as it's like an itemized bill, where all of a sudden half of that bill is blanked out in terms of what you're actually paying for, and you don't get to see what you're actually paying for.
I get what he's saying there, but I'm sure with all their legalese, and advertisers have no ground for that.
Yeah. That was one of the hardest parts about the news, though. Like, even when they announced the partners changes, they didn't say when they weren't going into place right away. And this was like, hey, the data's gone.
Yeah.
It's not there.
Take it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
You have no data.
Now, at some point, we agreed to advertise with Google under a certain idea of what data we are receiving, and that has changed without our agreement, and that has concerned me.
It concerns us as well, and we are going to help turn this podcast into how to advertise and grow and thrive and succeed without Google Ads. That's what it's become. They're so aggressive towards their advertisers, and they have so much disdain towards people giving them money. That's fine. We're going to help people succeed without Google Ads.
I see kind of a main issue here as being twofold. So with this change, I see a couple things. First, there's a continued move by Google in limiting both their communication and their transparency to agencies and partners, using terms like significant rather than just giving us what the amount is. Like the amount is a hard number. It's not like they're changing it every other day, right? So why don't they communicate that? They don't communicate that because they don't see us as partners.
Again, I take a little bit of umbrage with that because I'm guessing they're going to remove. And while removing, expand, close variance. So at some point it's a number, and then at some point that number is going to go up, just like James said.
They see themselves as this kind of monarchy of which we are all kind of the loyal servants. And so I think that obviously has significant problems. Thought number 4.
I will never be a loyal servant.
So we talked before about in terms of transparency and how Google communicates, and in some ways it's them communicating as if they are this like reigning monarchy, right? What that means to me is that even though they will never admit it, is that they see themselves more and more in terms of a monopoly. They're basically engaged in and acting as if they answer to no one. And that's how they're communicating. And unfortunately, about the only way that you break up that sort of power is not by asking them to stop. Unfortunately, it's by forcing them to break up that power, right? Is actually forcing that power to break up. And so the only way I see out of kind of this trend that we see of Google making these major decisions is unfortunately some sort of deep pocket suing them, FTC, something like that. It's unfortunate. I think we're at that crossroads.
I heard what he said there. But what I'm going to take from that is our petition's going to work. And that was it from Kirk. Again, this is the last time there's going to be any voicemail over a minute long. And we'll finish this off here just because people really are upset about it.
So after it's been another, say, 2 weeks since we've had the search term report change from Google, we've been going through and seeing how it's impacting our client accounts. And really what we've seen is a couple things. Number one, for smaller clients, they're being disproportionately impacted. We're seeing anywhere from a 20% to up to a 60 or 70% decline. And number two, as we start to look at this in totality with Google's changes to matching, to search query reports, pushing automation, optimization scores, the picture becomes increasingly clear of a company that's hell-bent on punishing advertisers, maximizing profits, and really limiting control of campaigns, which really does fit with Google's kind of end game of cutting out agencies and going direct to clients to own those relationships. It's not good for advertisers, and the only person that really benefits.
Well, Sam got cut off there because he went over the limit, but we've got another one. And just a quick disclaimer, Sam, I think, is one of the brightest minds on this and is so intelligent in the ways. And I believe that both Kirk and Sam were on Edge of the Web podcast. Again, I'll put a link in the show notes if you want to hear more. But here's Sam's second message to us.
The really shocking thing about Google's series of changes that they've made over the past, call it, say, 6 months to a year, going back to query matching, and then the latest the optimization score push, and then this latest search term change, is the blatant disregard for the needs and the wants of advertisers, and this insistence that their technology is always right, and that their machine learning is good enough. And honestly, there's no demonstrable evidence of that. And even organic search in the B2B space, for instance, is flawed. So Google really doesn't have a better solution. So what they're doing is using monopoly power, which they have, to push their only solution and mandate adoption or else. It's unethical, it's horrible, and it results in worse outcomes for all involved except Google. And that's unacceptable.
I agree. It's really sad.
It's hard to argue with him.
He's doing, he's keeping his composure really well for as angry as you can tell he is, right?
Sam is great. He's really great. But you all run a lot of experiments. Let's say target return on ad spend or maximize conversion value. What percentage can beat what you can do with CPC or eCPC?
I'm not good with percentages off the top of my head, but not a lot.
It's probably
We're surprised
50-50.
every time.
Like it really depends on what the product is and everything like that. But I'm never surprised if CPC wins.
Yeah.
And to Sam's, and then the other side of me is like, what kind of moron would just trust Google and their machine learning? You know that they're making money off of you. They're going to do this, turn everything machine learning, put everybody bidding on the same terms against each other, raising the bids up, and just being more evil. Like, why would you trust the person you're paying to make you do better? They're going to make them do better.
Mm-hmm. And what he said about the queries being hidden disproportionately affecting smaller advertisers.
And it is.
Those are also the advertisers that the automation never works for. Like CPC is always going to win.
Yeah.
The ones who smart campaigns are recommended for, by the way. Yeah.
And so B2B, especially too, as Melissa Mackey would say, there's none of that. Do you guys want to hear Sam's last message?
Yeah.
Okay, last one. So the privacy concern that Google raises as the justification for eliminating low volume searches. Number one, it seems like it's an awfully convenient excuse with Google saying, give me all of your data and I'm going to take it, and then I'm going to protect your privacy. No one trusts them to do that. Number two, the privacy concern has been around for a while. GDPR has been around for a while. And it's never been raised before, so why now? Seems convenient. And number 3, and I think the most critical point is, if you're so concerned with privacy, then the easiest solution is allow advertisers to opt out of purchasing a thing they don't want or can't get data on. And those advertisers that do want it can opt in. But Google's not doing that. They are literally taking all of the data and just not giving it to advertisers who could then use it to make things work better for clients.
Retweet.
Dropping that mic.
And so that is one of the reasons why in the petition that started this whole news cycle here, all we asked for is ability to opt out, not to reverse this, not to go back. But if there is such a privacy issue with user data, let us opt out. That's your excuse. Fine. Live with it and let us get out of there, because that is a terrible excuse. And it's just not part of reality. It's just not. So please head on over to the change.org petition, go to marketingclock.com to find that. Sign it if you agree and share it. And let's see if at least it can't be overturned. Maybe we can be able to opt out, as Sam so clearly stated.
Like what you saw? Of course you did. If you're looking for more, Marketing and Clock releases new episodes every Friday with the digital marketing news of the week. You can subscribe wherever you consume your podcasts, or click to watch the full episode, the next news story, or read all the articles from the show.